Orphans who didn't get adopted, what happened, and how is life now? Story 1. I didn't live in a foster home. I was placed into a group home after me and my brother were removed from our home for child abuse. So I don't know if I would be counted as an orphan, but I'll share anyway. I was removed when I was 17, but I've been in state custody a few times for child abuse on my mother's side. I lived in Georgia, and since I was so close to outgrowing the system, they offered me an independent living program where DFCs would help me get an apartment and a job. But I was placed back at my house right before I turned 18. I've been on my own since I've been 18 in April. I had no job, just kicked out of my home, and no ID, and no license. And the first thing DFCs did when I called them was meet me face to face and tell me I was no longer in the system, but to call them if I needed anything else. While I was still in custody, I was college-bound, and the most DFCs did for me was financially hinder me to the point that I might not be able to attend college this fall. After filing my FAFSA for college, I was awarded the fullest support possible by the state. But when I was audited for my fall semester, they wanted a lot of papers from the IRS and DFCS. But the IRS won't respond to my fax, calls, or even online. DFCs is even worse. I had almost 5 different caseworkers while in the system, and now every time I call DFCs about help with my audit, they don't pick up my calls. No representative will help me, and basically they've cut off all support and contact. So now I have no way to get a loan for school because I have no family, no way to get a job because I start school soon, and getting a job now would mean I can't go to school this semester. And my only way of going to college is either DFCs helps me with the audit or I win the lottery and pay for my first semester out of pocket. Too long didn't read, not doing so well. Find the closest office and sit in there every day bugging people until you get the information you need. If someone says they can't help you, ask for their manager and don't leave until you get help from someone. Don't take their crap. Don't take another phone number. If they want you to meet with someone else, you have them call while you're there and set up an appointment. Story 2. I also lived in a home for children, a children's home, as you will. I ran away from an abusive family, taking my younger brother with me. Since before I can remember, my mother was a drug abuser and an alcoholic, thus equaling neglect and abuse. Schooling was not a thing that she cared about, or her children's well-being. We skipped around in direct relation to her skipping from a man's bed to bed. I ended up teaching myself how to read and diving into literature to escape. Eventually, enough was enough, once I started getting wise to self-independence, and I ran. When I was 12, we lived in a few neighborhoods that had an abundance of fruit trees. Stealing to survive, drinking out of hoses, etc., people got wise and called the police. They scooped us up and put us into CPS custody. They moved us halfway house to halfway house, finally to a 24-hour facility for about a year to determine our temperament as children. Once they assessed us, they sent us to PCHAS. It's a facility run by families, male and females, and then an alternate. I saw a lot of kids phase in, phase out, and age out of care. The 2 hardest things about it was never having the sense of belonging, as if they truly did not care. School was a nightmare. I started in 7th grade, never knowing another child. I was backplaced because of the lack of education, supposed to be in 8th grade. Making friends was hard. They saw us as different and alienated us because we were from the home. I tried to fit in and played varsity football for 4 years. Running away makes you fast, it seems. Had a job and was likable, but it never worked. I graduated and went to college, couldn't afford it, and had to put my education on hold. Joined the military and served for 6 years and 3 tours in war zones. I'm currently working on my bachelor's in business. In retrospect, my biggest problem, I think, is the inability to love and trust. I care deeply for people, mostly my friends, which I treat as if they're family. But overall, I care out on top, for the people that still struggle. Dig deep, find something you love, hold up to that, and use it to help you grow. I apologize for the rant. Talking about it all helps. Story 3. My parents got by, but never had much money. They divorced when I was 10. My dad was a Vietnam vet and an alcoholic, a tough combo. My mom was perfect. She wasn't, but that's how I remember her. My dad drank himself to the end when I was 15, and then my mom had a heart attack and passed away in her sleep when I was 16, the day after Thanksgiving. I freaking hate Thanksgiving now. But I was lucky. A friend's parents offered to take care of me until I graduated high school, and my aunt and uncle, legal guardians, loved me a lot. They tried to make themselves a presence, but didn't want to force the mom and dad thing down my throat either. The relationship with my friend really suffered because he felt I got preferential treatment when it came to discipline. I did. I stayed out late at night, skipped dinner frequently. She was a terrible cook. My mom was freaking gourmet, and generally acted like a kind of butthole for 2 years that I was there. His mom used to get really ticked off at me when I would show up 5 minutes after curfew and shrug it off. The upshot of staying in the same school was that I met a girl. We hit it off and started dating, and her family was really good to me. They fed me good food and treated me with respect and without pity. I really liked them too. We stayed together through college, moved in together, and got married. I started working for her father. Then he got sick. Really, really sick. He had a super advanced stage of bowel cancer and had a few years left, if that. He asked if I wanted to take over his business, even though I had only been working for him for a year or so. I said yes, and when he passed a year later, I took over. Anyway, life turned out okay. I kept the business afloat and bought a house with my wife after a few years. Now we've got 2 kids, and things are looking pretty good. I miss my parents a lot, though. I wish they could see their grandkids. Story 4. I was effectively raised in a big facility for kids. They didn't have room for kids too damaged by abuse or the system to be out and about. These days, I'm mostly upset about what it did to the continuity of my education. My past ruined my future, and the only girl I've ever loved doesn't want me because I'm a mess, and it just kind of kills me every day to know I'm so disposable, an auxiliary person. I think because I've never had a stable family or been accepted anywhere, I put a lot more value in human relationships than other people. And time after time, I've learned I'm not worth it to the rest of the world. It's weird because I've always been reasonably intelligent and done well in school, so all the things most people really value have come easy to me. I'm working on grad school and I'll get a doctorate. I play the bass guitar, I've traveled quite a bit, but all I ever wanted was to love and be loved, and it just feels impossible. All I want is something everyone else just seems to have. I still watch everyone go to their parents' houses for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and I've got nowhere to go. I've graduated college with no one there to cheer me on. I'm just getting tired of exerting myself, when, truthfully, no one really cares. When I was being hurt growing up, I always felt like it was something to rise against. I always knew I could forge a future for myself with education, get a good job, and love someone in a way no one's loved me. These days, though, at 30, I just feel like I missed the boat, and I'm tired of the miserable world I live in. Not trying to be creepy, it's probably 500% creepy, but I saw in your post history that you were having a hard time and living out of your car. It was 5 months ago, but I just wanted to see how you're doing. If that's still the case, I'm in PNW also, and just want to make sure you've got a good place to sleep tonight. Story 5. I was in foster care, but was never adopted. I was taken away from my biological family at a young age, and from then on, I only met them by appointment on a weekly basis for about an hour under supervision. I went from home to home, being told directly that you are only here because you make us money, and if you were my real son, you'd be treated differently. When I would misbehave, my foster parents would threaten to call the agency and return me like some defective product. During the summertime, I was sent to camp so they can get a break from me and spend alone time with their biological children. It took a mental toll on me, and I lived in constant fear. The people I was surrounded with in my foster homes made me believe that anybody that interacted with me wanted to use me, and that led me to withdraw from everybody and isolate myself to be on the safe side. I really only felt at home when I was in school. Things are better now. I'm working on my PhD, and I'm trying my very best to build healthy relationships with people. But it's extremely hard to open up when I've been hurt so much. When I see stray cats on the street that don't trust me to feed them, I feel I have a deeper understanding of why they act the way they do. My walk of life has taught me that all things are transient, but the best feeling that I've ever felt is love. If you have any children, give them a big hug and tell them you love them. It means more than you would ever know. God dang, some people suck. Glad things are looking up. I wish you the best. You deserve it. Story 6. I wasn't an orphan in the sense that my parents were passed away, but neither were capable of caring for me. At age 13, I was forcibly removed from my mom's care. She lost physical and legal custody of me and my siblings, and I was placed with family. My grandparents had temporary custody of me until my mom was fit to be a parent again. The problem was, she never got her act together, so I remained a ward of the state with legal guardians until I graduated high school. I wish I was put in foster care with strangers. Then, at least, the neglect, abuse, and trauma I experienced would be more understandable. The way I see it, it must be easier to treat strangers poorly than your own flesh and blood. If I was living with strangers, I wouldn't have taken it all so personally. It's been about 13 years since my family was split by the courts, and in this time I managed to graduate from high school and college, have a few relationships, albeit failed ones. I have a kid who's pretty awesome, and 8 years of therapy to show that I've made some positive progress emotionally. I ultimately hope to work with families who are impacted by addiction and mental health, which is what split my family, to connect them with resources and build emotional and psychiatric resilience to cope with these problems. I believe I've stopped the cycle of abuse in my family. I want to help others stop the cycle too. This is so profound. Story 7. I never got adopted, but the state surrendered me back to my parents right before high school. That was about 7 years ago. All of my observations are from the Texas foster care system, but they should generally be indicative of the systems across the country. Federally, they're supposed to be organized similarly. The system is tough in some places, absolutely lovely in others. I had a good experience in the foster care system, FCS, but some kids don't. Generally, we all just knew that anyone who made it past about 8 without getting adopted was pretty strongly not likely to get adopted. A lot of kids get to be a bit bitter and angry that they never get adopted, and that absolutely kills their likelihood to get adopted. There's also a fair amount of racism amongst the middle school and older kids at bigger group homes where the parents don't want to make it feel like a family, but it seems to generally be against the white kids, who are a minority in the foster care system. You can always tell which parents really love being the foster parents and which are either burnt out or don't really love it. The ones who love raising kids always keep their homes disciplined, and they really will make you realize how lucky you are to have them. Just like the good teachers in school, good foster parents in the circuit have a good reputation. I can't speak for other states, but Texas has a good system. Story 8. I was in foster care shortly after birth. No father in the picture, never met this guy to this day, although I have been presented opportunities, and mom did not have any education, from Mexico. Have an older brother that got into trouble frequently, which kept both of us bouncing from foster care home to foster home. At the age of 6, we moved to a home where I would stay from then to aging out. Felt like part of the family, foster family, and thought things were good. Very close to my 18th birthday, I was asked by my social worker if I had somewhere I could stay if needed. I told her yes, and I was told that they had new foster kids coming in a few days. Moved out that week, and after spending 12 years with these people, was not given any kind of goodbye. All right, I'm taking off then. All right. Tried working my way up the ladder after dropping out of community college at 19 and 20. Lost a job and tried to apply to places with a lot of experience and could not get a job to save my life. After a 10-year hiatus, went back to community college and transferred to a 4-year school. Starting my senior year, I plan to continue with my master's degree and hope to go into school counseling. Would love to make an impact on what I consider the most important years of development, middle school. Story 9. I was raised by various family members. I did a little time in a foster home. The subject of adoption never really came up. My mom's family helped me through college, along with student loans. I teach English in China now, and I'm looking to return to the U.S. next year. Best part, my abusive parents had the decency to A. shoot himself in the head, and then B. she passed away of cancer a year later. So honestly, I don't give too many shots about their passing away. Well, that's now. It was 30 years ago, and it was a long road to get to where I am now. Wasn't a pretty one at times. I struggled a lot with being self-destructive, depressive, and all sorts of things. I still struggle a lot, but remind myself on a daily basis that stuff can always be worse. Enjoy what I have now, and don't be crippled by thoughts of the past. Isn't always easy, but often it's all I got, so it has to do. Story 10. I went into foster care when I was 13 and eventually aged out. I was in about 12 homes between the ages of 13 to 16. It's not easy to place a teenage girl. I'm white and 10 out of my 12 families were black. My state, I'm not sure if this is something that's done everywhere, had an annual Foster Child of the Year award. You get nominated by social workers and foster parents. When I was 16, I was nominated and won. Got to go to a big banquet. Met Stedman Graham, was given $1,000. Anyways, after I won that, I was placed with a very nice family who I stayed with until I was 18. Always thought they would adopt me, but they never did. I'm 28 now, and I don't talk to any of them anymore. Now I own my own business. I'm getting married in 2 weeks. I made my own family out of friends who I celebrate holidays with. Sometimes I feel left out when people are talking about their childhood and the things they did growing up. I've had rough patches, and I get lonely. It'd be easier to get bitter, but I know how much life can truly suck, and I'm grateful for every day it doesn't. Story 11. I'm an orphan and went to live in a foster home. Over the years, around 200 other kids came and went. It affects you not having a real family. I'm still in contact with my twin sister, who had the same date of birth as me, and my little brother, who's 13 years my junior, but I took him under my wing because his parents passed away in a crash as well. I'm not going to say life was easy. It wasn't. There were some mental health issues. I spent some time in a mental hospital, but came out and I got into university, got my degree, went to work in the private sector, done well there. No one seemed to care about my mental health past. No one asked about my parents or my life growing up. I now work in a university after the crash of 2009. I'm married with 2 kids, which I love more than life. I will do everything I can to show them how much I love them and protect them from the bad in this world. All in all, it wasn't a great start to my life, but you learn from everything, and more importantly, you can grow. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Story 12. My mom was in 42 different foster homes, orphanages, etc. My mom never got adopted for 2 reasons. They would not split her and her psychotic, violent brother up, and my sociopath of a grandmother would prevent anyone from adopting mom. If mom was getting emotionally attached to a foster mother, psycho grandma would find out and have mom pulled out of the home. Mom would tell grandma about nice foster mother during planned visits. Even though mom and uncle had 2 parents, they were still in orphanages and foster homes since their narcissistic mother and playboy father couldn't be bothered with taking care of their own kids. Mom turned out okay, finally found stability in my dad, who loved and cared for her until the day he passed away. Now I take care of her. She's had such a tough life, and her strength shows. She came out of that traumatic childhood sane and able to raise a family. Story 13. Finally, something I know a little bit about. I grew up in state care from about age 9 to 17. I lost my father when I was about 6 years old due to seppuku, and I don't remember him much. My mom sort of went downhill from there. Drugs, bad boyfriends, the whole 9 yards. I went into state care and started my extended stay with the state. I bounced between about 12 different homes before getting myself stuck in a dreaded group home for at-risk youth. I quickly pulled my crap together and applied to a private foster care program called Casey Family Programs. I finally got a shot at a little normalcy before aging out of the system. I now work as a software engineer and am doing pretty well, all things considered. Have a great relationship with my foster adopted family and even some halfway decent relationship with my birth mother. Today I'm doing well. Unfortunately, the little foster kid in the back of my head is always ready for things to fall apart. Story 14. A friend of mine was removed from his home as a kid. His dad was in white-collar jail, and his stepmother beat him. A neighbor called the cops when they found my friend half-naked under a mailbox, trying to keep the snow off of himself in the winter. Dad refused to give up rights. Mom, who took off years ago, refused, so he was stuck in a group home until he was 18. He said it sucked, but was better than being beaten or not fed. At 18, they gave him the boot onto the streets. He got a job, an apartment, and lost it shortly after the landlord kicked him out for having a friend over. He lived with us a year after that. My family wanted him to have a safe place to grow up a bit more and breathe before hitting the real world. He struggled for a few years, but he got his college degree, got married, had a kid, and is doing well now. He always was bitter that his parents wouldn't give up their rights. He could have had a proper home instead of belonging to two people who forgot about him and don't even see him. Story 15. Orphaned at age 14 here. Growing up was drastically different than everyone else I've noticed. I wouldn't say it was all bad, but the majority of it was crappy. I didn't realize it at the time. I'm 22 now, and I have a really hard time making any actual connection with people, honestly. I find a lot of the time I have a difficult time feeling sympathy or empathy. Don't get me wrong, I do feel them, just not too often. For the longest time, I resented people who had a whole family, and especially the ones who hate their mom and dad. But I've grown out of that now. I'd say I'm a mostly functional human being. I've done some fricked up things to some people. I am what I am, and I'm always working on being a better person. Losing your parents sucks, but I think comparatively, I've had it easy. Story 16. I'm surviving. Not technically an orphan, but I grew up in foster care. I have no family but my baby sister, who is now an adult and is surviving as well. I've always been like her mom, so we do holidays and things together with the significant others we have at the time. Life is hard, especially when you have no one to turn to for help. Friends make it better, but I don't have any super close ones, except for one. My mom is still around, but not really as a mom in the sense of wanting to take care of us. Things could be worse, and as I type this, I look around to all my fur babies and see all the things I own, and I feel grateful for what I have. If I know anything, it's that my life won't always be this way, and things always get better. Story 17. I was raised in foster care from age 7 until I aged out. I lived in a few homes, but never found my forever home, so to speak. Something unlovable about me. I still call my last foster family, family, but legally we aren't anything. I really struggled in my 20s with drugs and booze, wasted a lot of years trying to self-medicate. I did get a BA degree in history somehow, quit drinking, won't even touch more than an aspirin. I have a real job, a retirement account, and own my own home. I have 2 children I adore and make sure they have none of the issues I had. I still have a lot of issues and get depressed because I know if I had the least bit of a normal life, I could be so much better than what I am now. Story 18. I was in foster care with relatives after my mother passed away, but was never in the system per se. They kicked me out at 18, but I was eligible for a lot of benefits due to being a ward of the state my teen years. My aunt and uncle never officially adopted me. I struggled through college, but I did end up graduating and have a solid job, a home, and I'm getting married in less than 3 months. Congratulations! You've overcome some astounding odds. I'm very happy to hear that you found someone to share your life with going forward. Story 19. Not me, but my dad. He was fortunately a great athlete, got a baseball scholarship to college, then dropped out to join the Marines and fight in Vietnam. Came back, became a police officer, drank a lot, got married 3 times, had me, and finally passed away at 51 from drinking himself to death. I'm incredibly proud of how hard he fought to achieve upward mobility in society. We were never rich, but we never wanted for anything either. Still, though, growing up in an orphanage for kids really messed him up, and it's why he drank. If someone had just bothered to love my dad as a kid, he might still be alive today. Story 20. My dad was never in the picture, and when I was 15, my mom went to prison for manufacturing and distributing meth. She was sentenced to 5 years, and I haven't seen her since. I lived with cousins, also drug addicts, until I was 16. Got a job selling newspaper subscriptions door to door after school, went for the GED the same year and started college, but ended up dropping out because I had no car and couldn't make it to school and had no one to help. After that, I joined the Army, and now that I'm out and have the GI Bill to provide a little stability, I'm finishing my degree. Story 21. Okay, so my parents both relented their rights, so I was a ward of the state. But I was kicked out of foster care at 20 because I got my own place, and they saw that as being defiant. So I'm currently going to school for meteorology. I have a full-time job, I have my own car, I do suffer from depression, but I have ambitions, and I refuse to be like my parents. I think I'm doing great. As far as never being adopted, well, that was my fault. I was a very badly behaved foster kid, and I messed up every chance I had for a family. I regret it now, but I don't let it hold me back. Story 22. I was taken in by relatives, but never legally adopted. They raised me fine, and the only real issue is that I didn't have insurance between the ages of 18, when I was dropped from their plan for being an adult, and 24, when I had to purchase insurance for the ACA. If I was legally theirs, I could stay on their plan for another 2 years. Same exact thing with me, except I got insurance at 23 when I got a full-time job after college. Story 23. Another foster parent here. Even my toughest placement was so worth taking. I love doing it, even with all of its ups and downs, and it has made me passionate about foster care and children's rights. Thanks to you kind people, I lost my brother, sister, and my parents on one single night. That was the hardest period I had ever suffered. Even though the feeling was never the same, my foster parents had definitely got me through with their care. Story 24. I'm not a foster child, but my friend was, and in middle school, I'll never forget, people were picking on her, and she said to me, "It's okay that they make fun, because my parents picked me out of all the other kids. They could have chosen another child, but they picked me, and I'm here at this school." We were at a private school that I took for granted looking back. I don't know, that just kind of always stuck with me. There's something special, I think, about being adopted for the long term. Story 25. So I was never adopted, grew up in 4 different government homes, and then was going to be kicked when I turned 18. I was in school, and the military was always showing up doing those recruiting booths. I joined the Air Force and have been for 19 years now. Found my own family, and really proved the phrase, blood doesn't make family. I have been to 7 continents and over 24 countries. I have to tell you, retirement is scarier than those days as a kid. Story 26. I was adopted from an orphanage in Haiti. Some of my friends that don't get adopted have been sponsored by wealthy families in Canada. They said by 14 to 16, they're pushed out of the orphanage compound and into the real world. Some continued with education, but most try to find their way in a country with little to no opportunity. Some have moved to the Dominican Republic for more opportunities. The ones that have sponsored us spend the first 5 years learning the language and getting a job. Story 27. I was left at the hospital by my biological mother immediately after being born. She hadn't lined up an adoptive family or even contacted an adoption agency. This was in the late 80s, when the HIV/AIDS panic was high. While I was eventually adopted, there were a lot of babies in my situation who were not, because adoptive parents were fearful of adopting an infant if the mother's HIV status wasn't known. Story 28. My girlfriend was kicked out of her home at 14. Her parents were addicts with anger problems. My parents let her move in with us. It's been 7 years, and we have our own place together now. It was so nice of my parents to do that. I don't know what shape she would be in if they had not been so loving as to welcome her into our home. Story 29. I was in foster care, but I was never adopted. My first foster parents never legally adopted me, but we call each other family. They never were emotional, and I constantly live in fear of being disowned if I don't finish college or maintain a Catholic lifestyle. Both motivating and depressing. Story 30. Quite often, the foster parents want precious little babies to adopt. The reason that a lot of older kids go to group homes is often because no foster parents are available or willing to take them. Behavior can steer them to better or worse places. Story 31. I was never adopted, and ultimately I go through life feeling unloved, no matter who's around. I believe nobody will ever love me. Emotionally, I'm all messed up, but professionally I'm doing well, and physically I look good, so... Story 32. I'm not an orphan, but had to be put in care due to abuse and other things. Reading all your stories makes me feel like you are my family. We guys get each other. Know what we went through and how messed up emotionally we are now. Story 33. When I got out of foster care, I joined the Army. I was in for 7 years and got out when my wife got pregnant. Now I'm a veteran with a great job, a house, 2 cars, and 2 kids. So glad I didn't end myself at 15. I'm not unalive. Story 34. I'm a white American male who has 2 living divorced parents who raised me in an upscale suburb. Frick, I'm lucky, and yet I still have days where I feel like I'm messed up. But I'm grateful for posts like this that help keep me in check. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.